My name is Amy Wilson, and at 34, I thought I had the perfect marriage. For 7 years, Derek and I built what I believed was an unshakable foundation of trust and love. Until I noticed that bitter aftertaste in my nightly tea. The drowsiness that followed felt wrong, too heavy, too sudden. I tried to dismiss my suspicions until that night when I caught Derek hovering over me, checking if I was truly asleep. What I discovered next shattered my world completely. If you're watching this, let me know where you're viewing from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button to follow my journey from betrayal to strength. Derek and I met 9 years ago at the annual Christmas party for Patterson Publishing, where I worked as an assistant editor at the time. He wasn't an employee but came as a +1 with his college roommate, Jason, who worked in the marketing department. I remember that night so clearly. I was wearing a red dress that my friend Stephanie had convinced me to buy, saying it would bring me good luck. Looking back now, I wonder if that dress brought me luck or something else entirely. Derek stood out immediately in the crowded venue. Tall with warm brown eyes and an infectious laugh, he had this way of making whoever he was talking to feel like the most important person in the room. When Jason introduced us, there was an immediate connection. We talked for hours that night, long after most guests had left. By the time we exchanged numbers, I already felt like I'd known him for years. Our romance moved quickly after that. First date at a small Italian restaurant where we closed the place down talking. Second date at an art gallery where he remembered every painting I mentioned liking. By the 3rd month, we were practically inseparable. Friends joked about how we'd skipped the awkward dating phase entirely. After a year, we moved in together, and by our 2nd anniversary, Derek proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. The wedding was small but perfect, just 50 of our closest friends and family. Stephanie was my maid of honor, and Jason stood as Derek's best man. After marriage, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. I continued working at Patterson Publishing, eventually being promoted to senior editor for their fiction department. I loved my job, discovering new authors, helping shape manuscripts into books that would touch readers' lives. Derek worked as a financial advisor at Montgomery Financial, a mid-sized firm with an excellent reputation in Chicago. His clients adored him, and he frequently received recognition for his performance. We bought a beautiful 3-bedroom house in Oak Park, a charming suburb just outside Chicago. Our neighbors quickly became friends, and we hosted regular dinner parties and summer barbecues. Our daily routines became comforting rituals. Derek would wake up first, go for a morning run, and start the coffee. I'd join him in the kitchen, and we'd plan our day over breakfast. In the evenings, I'd usually cook while Derek mixed drinks or opened wine. And every night before bed, without fail, Derek would make us both tea, chamomile for me, green tea for himself. "It's my way of taking care of you," he'd say. "Making sure you sleep well." For 5 years, our marriage seemed perfect. We traveled to Europe twice, started investment accounts for our future children, and even began casually looking at properties for a vacation home near Derek's parents in Michigan. From the outside, and even from my perspective, we were living the dream. The first changes were so subtle I barely noticed them. About 6 months ago, Derek began guarding his phone more carefully. Nothing dramatic, just small things, like placing it face down on tables or taking it with him to the shower. He started working later, explaining that they were taking on more high-profile clients who required extra attention. The late-night work calls increased. Sometimes I'd wake at 2 or 3 in the morning to find his side of the bed empty, only to discover him in his home office, door closed, speaking in hushed tones. "Just client issues," he'd explain with a tired smile. "Some of these people have anxiety about their investments and need reassurance at odd hours." I believed him because why wouldn't I? Derek had always been dedicated to his clients, and Montgomery Financial prided itself on personalized service. Then came the unexplained absences. Weekends when he'd disappear for hours, claiming he was meeting Jason for golf or helping a client outside regular hours. His explanations always sounded reasonable, but something felt off. The Derek I knew had always shared details about his day, his clients, without breaking confidentiality, of course, his friends. Now his answers became vague, general. During this time, Derek's firm hired several new employees, including Karen Reynolds, a transfer from their New York office. I met her only once at the company's summer party. Attractive, in her early 30s, with a confident manner and sharp intelligence. Derek introduced us briefly before being pulled away by his boss. Something about the way Karen watched him walk away made me uncomfortable, but I dismissed it as my imagination. My best friend Stephanie was the first to voice concerns. We'd been friends since college, and she knew me better than anyone except Derek. During our monthly lunch, she asked pointed questions about how things were going at home. "Is everything okay with you and Derek? You seem distracted lately." I assured her everything was fine, just busy with work and life. But her question lingered, making me more attentive to the small changes in our marriage. "Derek's just stressed about some big clients," I explained. "The financial market has been volatile, and he feels responsible for his clients' futures." Stephanie nodded but didn't seem convinced. "Just remember I'm here if you ever need to talk about anything." I appreciated her concern but felt slightly defensive of Derek and our marriage. After all, every relationship goes through phases, right? We were just in a busy period. Things would settle down soon. Around this time, I noticed Derek becoming increasingly interested in my work schedule, my lunches with friends, my plans for each day. He'd text during the day to check where I was or when I'd be home. Again, nothing alarming, it could easily be interpreted as thoughtfulness. But combined with everything else, it created a vague sense of unease I couldn't quite shake. There were also new questions about my family's finances. After my Aunt Linda passed away 6 months ago, I inherited a substantial sum, nearly $350,000. Derek had always been supportive about keeping some of our finances separate, but suddenly he had suggestions about investing my inheritance through his firm. When I mentioned wanting to think about it and perhaps consult with an independent financial advisor, he seemed unusually frustrated but quickly covered it with understanding. "Of course, take your time," he said. "I just want to make sure you're getting the best return possible." All these small changes created a background noise of doubt in what had been a harmonious marriage. Still, I trusted Derek. I loved him. And I believed that whatever was happening, we could work through it together. Until that first night I noticed the strange taste in my tea. It started on a Tuesday night, nothing special about the day. I had stayed late at work finalizing edits on a manuscript that was behind schedule for publication. When I finally arrived home around 8, Derek had already made dinner. Pasta with a store-bought sauce, nothing fancy, but I appreciated the gesture. "Rough day?" he asked, pouring me a glass of wine. I nodded, telling him about the manuscript issues while we ate. He seemed distracted, checking his phone frequently, but I was too tired to think much of it. After dinner, as usual, he made our nightly tea. I took mine to the living room, settling on the couch with a book I needed to review for work. The first sip tasted off. There was a slight bitterness beneath the honey and chamomile that I hadn't noticed before. I frowned at the cup. "Did you change tea brands?" I called to Derek, who was loading the dishwasher. "No, same as always," he replied without looking up. "Why?" "Just tastes different tonight." He glanced over. "Probably just because you're tired. Everything tastes different when you're exhausted." His explanation made sense, so I continued drinking, though the unusual taste lingered. Within 15 minutes, a heavy drowsiness began to settle over me. Not the gentle relaxation that normally came with evening tea, but something more profound. My eyelids felt weighted, my thoughts becoming foggy. Even holding my book required effort. "I think I need to go to bed," I mumbled, setting the book down. "I'm completely wiped out." Derek looked up from his laptop with concern. "You do look tired. Want me to help you upstairs?" I shook my head, but as I stood, a wave of dizziness hit me. Derek was immediately at my side, steadying me. "Whoa there. "Let me help you," he said, guiding me up the stairs to our bedroom. The sensation was disturbing. I'd been tired before, even exhausted, but this felt different. My limbs were heavy, my coordination off. As Derek helped me into bed, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that something wasn't right, but the overwhelming drowsiness made it hard to focus on that thought. "I'll be up in a bit," Derek said, adjusting the covers around me. "Get some rest." I don't know how long I slept. It might have been 20 minutes or 2 hours, when I partially awoke, that strange grogginess still clouding my senses. Through half-closed eyes, I saw Derek standing beside the bed, looking down at me. He waved his hand slowly in front of my face. Instinctively, I kept my breathing deep and regular, feigning deeper sleep than I was actually in. Something about his behavior triggered alarm bells through the fog in my mind. Derek leaned closer, examining my face carefully. He gently lifted one of my eyelids, and I forced myself not to react, letting my eye remain unfocused. Satisfied that I was completely unconscious, he reached for my phone on the nightstand. With growing internal panic, I watched through the narrowest slits of my eyes as Derek used my thumb to unlock my phone. The realization that he was deliberately checking if I was unconscious sent cold waves of fear through me, but I maintained my pretense of sleep, instinctively understanding that I needed to know what was happening. Derek sat in the armchair across from our bed, scrolling through my phone with intense concentration. I could see him checking my email, my text messages, even my banking apps. What was he looking for? Was he spying on me? The betrayal of this invasion of privacy felt enormous, but confusion outweighed my anger. Why would Derek need to drug me to look through my phone? I had never given him any reason not to trust me. After about 20 minutes of this violation, Derek carefully returned my phone to its exact position on the nightstand. He stood watching me for another long moment, then quietly left the room, taking his own phone out of his pocket as he went. I lay there, my mind racing despite the chemical slowness still affecting my thoughts. I wanted to get up, to confront him immediately, but something held me back. If Derek was willing to drug me to go through my phone, what else might he be capable of? And more importantly, why? What was he looking for? The sound of Derek's voice drifted up from downstairs. He was on the phone with someone, speaking too quietly for me to make out the words. I strained to hear but couldn't distinguish anything useful from my position. My thoughts turned to the tea. Had Derek really put something in it to make me sleep? The idea seemed so outlandish, so contrary to the man I thought I knew, that even with the evidence before me, I struggled to believe it. Yet what other explanation could there be for my unusual symptoms and his behavior? I fought against the residual drowsiness, trying to organize my thoughts. I needed to be strategic. If I confronted Derek now, he would deny everything, and I had no real proof beyond my groggy observations. No, I needed more information before taking any action. The decision to investigate further wasn't easy. It meant acknowledging that my marriage might not be what I thought, that the man sleeping beside me every night might be a stranger in fundamental ways. But self-preservation instincts overrode my desire to believe in our perfect life. Tomorrow, I decided, I would begin looking for answers. I would discover what Derek was hiding, even if it broke my heart in the process. For now, I would continue pretending to sleep, pretending that everything was normal, pretending that my world wasn't cracking beneath my feet. When Derek finally came back to bed an hour later, I maintained my charade of drug-induced sleep. He slipped under the covers carefully, making sure not to wake me. As he settled in beside me, I felt miles of invisible distance between us, wondering how I could have shared a bed with someone for 7 years and not truly known them at all. The next morning, I woke with a pounding headache and a dry mouth. The grogginess from the night before had mostly dissipated, but left in its wake was a physical reminder that something was very wrong. Derek had already left for his morning run, his side of the bed cold. I took the opportunity to search the bathroom cabinet, looking for any unusual medications, but found nothing out of the ordinary. At work, I closed my office door and began researching symptoms of common sleeping medications. Drowsiness, mental fog, coordination issues, amnesia effects, everything matched what I had experienced. The more I read, the more convinced I became that Derek had indeed drugged me. The question remained, why? During lunch, I met with Stephanie at a cafe far from both our workplaces. I hadn't planned to tell her anything, but the weight of my suspicions was becoming unbearable to carry alone. "Steph, I need to ask you something weird," I said after we ordered. "Have you ever suspected that someone close to you was hiding something major?" Her eyebrows rose. "Is this about Derek?" I hesitated, then nodded slightly. "I'm not sure yet, but things haven't been right lately." "What kind of things?" The concern in her voice was evident. I told her about Derek's secretiveness, the late-night calls, his unexplained absences, but held back about the drugged tea and him going through my phone. It sounded too extreme, too accusatory without concrete proof. And some irrational part of me still hoped there was an explanation that wouldn't destroy everything. Stephanie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Amy, you're scaring me a little. If you think something seriously wrong is happening, maybe you should consider talking to the police?" "No," I said quickly. "No police. Not yet. I need to be sure before I do anything drastic." "Then what's your plan?" "I'm going to do some investigating of my own first," I said, feeling more resolved as I spoke the words aloud. Stephanie looked troubled. "Just be careful, okay? And call me anytime, day or night, if you need anything." After lunch, instead of returning to work, I went to an electronics store and purchased a small camera disguised as a clock radio. It wasn't cheap, but money seemed irrelevant compared to discovering the truth. I also bought a home drug test kit that claimed to detect benzodiazepines and sleep medications. That afternoon, Derek texted me several times, checking when I'd be home and offering to pick up dinner. His attentiveness, which would have seemed sweet just days before, now felt calculating, making me question every interaction we'd had recently. Had I been missing signs all along, or was this behavior truly new? Before heading home, I stopped by our local pharmacy and spoke with the pharmacist about testing drinks for medications. She seemed concerned and asked if I was okay, which nearly broke my composure. I assured her it was for a friend who had concerns about a roommate. "Most sleep medications have a bitter taste," she advised. "If you suspect something's in your drink, trust your instincts and don't consume it." At home, I carefully examined our tea supplies while Derek was in the shower. The regular tea boxes seemed untampered with. On a hunch, I checked Derek's gym bag in the closet and found a small unmarked amber bottle tucked into an inner pocket. I quickly photographed it but didn't open it, afraid of leaving evidence of my snooping. That evening, I placed the camera clock on our bookshelf, angled to capture most of our bedroom. I tested it several times to ensure it was working properly and that the footage was clear enough to be useful as evidence if needed. Throughout dinner, I maintained a facade of normalcy, discussing work and responding to Derek's questions about my day. The performance was exhausting, every smile and casual touch feeling like a betrayal of my own intuition. Yet beneath my pleasant exterior, I was hyper-aware of Derek's every movement, analyzing his expressions for signs of deception. "You seem quiet tonight," Derek commented as he cleared our plates. "Everything okay at work?" "Just tired," I replied, the irony of using this excuse not lost on me. "That manuscript is really taking it out of me." Derek nodded sympathetically. "How about I make you some tea? Might help you relax." "That would be nice," I said, forcing a grateful smile. I watched carefully from the kitchen doorway as Derek prepared the tea, but from my angle, I couldn't see if he added anything unusual. When he handed me the mug, I made a show of sipping it appreciatively while formulating my plan. "I think I'll read in the living room for a bit," I said, taking my mug with me. When Derek was distracted with a work call, I emptied most of my tea into a potted plant, leaving just enough in the cup to appear that I'd drunk it. 20 minutes later, I began my performance, yawning extensively and blinking slowly. "I can barely keep my eyes open," I mumbled, letting my book fall to my lap. "I think I need to sleep." Derek looked up from his laptop. You have been working hard. Why don't you go up? I'll join you soon. I nodded drowsily and made my way upstairs, deliberately shuffling my feet and using the banister heavily for support. In our bedroom, I changed into pajamas and got into bed, positioning myself so the camera had a clear view. Then I waited, pretending to be asleep while my heart raced with anticipation and fear of what I might discover. I lay motionless in bed, controlling my breathing to mimic deep sleep. The minutes stretched endlessly as I waited for Derek to come upstairs. Every small house noise made me tense, but I maintained my facade of unconsciousness. Finally, after what must have been about 40 minutes, I heard Derek's footsteps on the stairs. He entered our bedroom quietly, approaching the bed with careful steps. I felt him standing over me, studying my face. Just like the night before, he checked if I was truly asleep by waving his hand in front of my face and lightly touching my shoulder. "Amy?" he whispered. When I didn't respond, he seemed satisfied and pulled out his phone. Through barely open eyes, I watched as Derek dialed a number and moved to sit in the armchair across from our bed. He spoke in hushed tones, but in the quiet of our bedroom, I could hear every devastating word. "Hey, it's me," he said softly. "Yeah, she's out. The pills work fast, usually within 20 minutes. My stomach clenched, but I forced myself to remain still. This was confirmation of my worst fears. Derek was deliberately drugging me. I went through her emails again, he continued. Nothing suspicious yet. She hasn't contacted any other financial advisors as far as I can tell. There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. No, Karen, she doesn't suspect anything. She trusts me completely. Karen. The new colleague from his office. Hearing her name sent a wave of nausea through me that had nothing to do with any medication. I know we need to move quickly, Derek continued. Her aunt's inheritance is just sitting in that account. $350,000 that we could easily access. My inheritance. They were after my money. The betrayal cut deep, but there was more to come. The forged documents should be ready by Friday. I've been practicing her signature for weeks, it's practically perfect now. Forgery. My own husband was planning to steal my inheritance by forging my signature. The reality was almost too horrific to comprehend, but I forced myself to keep listening, to gather as much information as possible. No, it's not just about her money, Derek said, responding to something Karen had said. The client funds are the bigger prize. I've already moved about $2 million through the shell accounts we set up. Client funds. Shell accounts. This wasn't just about betraying me, Derek was embezzling money from his clients at the financial firm. If anyone starts investigating, all signs will point to Amy, Derek continued, his voice chillingly calm. I've been careful to use her devices when accessing certain accounts, establishing a digital trail. Her fingerprints and login credentials are all over this. He was setting me up to take the fall. The realization hit me like a physical blow, and I had to use every ounce of self-control not to react visibly. The sleeping pills are key, Derek explained. They ensure she has no idea what's happening, and they'll help explain why she doesn't remember doing any of this if it comes to that. We can suggest she has been taking medication for anxiety and it's affected her memory and judgment. The calculated nature of his betrayal was breathtaking. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a recent development, this was a long con, meticulously planned. I know it's risky, but the payoff is worth it, Derek said after another pause. Once we have the money transferred offshore, we can disappear. New identities, new life. They weren't just planning to steal my money, they were planning to run away together, leaving me to face the consequences of their crimes. I'll meet you at the hotel after she's asleep, Derek said, his voice softening in a way that made my skin crawl. The usual room. Yeah, I've missed you too. As Derek ended the call, I felt as though I was watching my entire marriage disintegrate before my eyes. The man I had loved, trusted, built a life with, was a criminal and a fraud. Every memory, every moment we'd shared, was now tainted by this devastating truth. Derek stayed in the room for a few more minutes, checking his phone. Then he approached the bed again, looking down at me with what I now recognized as calculation rather than affection. He leaned down and kissed my forehead lightly, a gesture that once would have filled me with warmth but now made me want to recoil. "Sleep tight, Amy," he whispered before leaving the room. When I heard his car start in the driveway, I finally allowed myself to move. I sat up, my entire body shaking with shock and rage. Tears streamed down my face as the full weight of Derek's betrayal crashed over me. I stumbled to the bathroom and retched, my body physically rejecting the horror of what I'd just learned. After splashing cold water on my face, I retrieved the camera and reviewed the footage to confirm it had captured Derek's conversation. It had. His confession was clearly recorded, both video and audio. I saved multiple copies to different devices, not trusting any single form of backup. Sitting on the edge of the bed that I had shared with a stranger for years, I tried to process everything I'd learned. Derek wasn't just having an affair, he was a criminal who had been systematically setting me up to take the blame for his financial crimes. He had drugged me repeatedly, invaded my privacy, forged my signature, and planned to steal my inheritance. The Derek I thought I knew, the loving husband who made me tea every night, who talked about having children someday, who held me when I cried at sad movies, had never existed. In his place was a manipulative con man who had seen me as nothing more than a convenient cover and an eventual scapegoat. As the shock began to give way to clarity, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I needed to protect myself, and I needed to act quickly. Derek thought he had all the power, that I was oblivious to his schemes. That misconception was now my greatest advantage. With shaking hands, I called Stephanie. It was nearly midnight, but I knew she would answer, and she did, on the second ring. "Amy? What's wrong?" Her voice was thick with sleep but instantly alert. "I need you," I said, my voice breaking. "Can you come over? Now? Derek's gone, and I can't be alone." "I'm on my way," she said without hesitation. 15 minutes. "Don't do anything until I get there." While waiting for Stephanie, I gathered the evidence I had so far: the camera footage, photos of the unmarked bottle in Derek's gym bag, screenshots of Derek using my laptop when he thought I was asleep. I placed the small bottle of sleeping pills I'd found in his gym bag into a plastic baggie, careful not to touch it directly. Stephanie arrived in record time, still in her pajamas with a coat thrown over them. One look at my face told her everything she needed to know about the seriousness of the situation. "My God, Amy, what happened?" she asked as I let her in. I could barely speak through my tears as I led her to the living room and showed her the video from the hidden camera. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror as she watched Derek revealing his plans. "That son of a bitch," she whispered when the video ended. "We need to call the police right now." "I need to know more first," I said, surprising myself with how calm I suddenly felt. "I need to understand exactly what he's done and how deep this goes." Stephanie looked at me with concern. "Amy, you heard him. He's embezzling money, drugging you, planning to frame you for his crimes. What more do you need to know?" "I need to know what he's done with my accounts, what documents he's forged, how much damage he's already caused," I explained. "Before the police get involved, I need to protect myself." Reluctantly, Stephanie agreed to help me search for more evidence. We started in Derek's home office, going through his files while wearing gloves to avoid contaminating potential evidence. In a locked drawer that I opened with the spare key Derek didn't know I had, we found a folder containing several documents with my forged signature, authorization forms for wire transfers, power of attorney documents, loan applications. "He's been practicing your signature for months," Stephanie said, comparing the forgeries to my actual signature. "They're nearly identical." We moved to his laptop next. Derek's password had always been some variation of our anniversary date followed by my initials. It took just 3 tries to access his computer. What we found was devastating: emails between Derek and Karen detailing their plan, spreadsheets tracking client funds they had diverted, research on countries without extradition treaties. Look at the dates, I said, pointing to the earliest emails. This has been going on for at least a year. He's been planning this since before my aunt even died. We were so absorbed in our discovery that we didn't hear the front door open. The first indication that Derek had returned was his voice from the office doorway. What the hell is going on here? We both jumped, spinning around to find Derek staring at us, his expression shifting rapidly from surprise to fury as he registered what we were doing. I think that's my question, I said, standing up straight, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Why have you been drugging me, Derek? His face paled slightly before he composed himself. What are you talking about? Are you having some kind of breakdown? Don't, I said sharply. I know everything. About the sleeping pills in my tea. About Karen. About the embezzlement and how you've been setting me up to take the fall. Derek's expression hardened. You've clearly been working too hard, Amy. You're imagining things. Why don't we talk about this in the morning after you've had some rest? He took a step toward me, reaching out as if to take my arm. Stay away from her, Stephanie said, moving between us. We have it all on video, Derek. Your phone call with Karen tonight. Your entire confession. For a moment, Derek froze. Then his eyes darted to the bookshelf in our bedroom, visible through the office doorway, landing on the clock radio camera I'd forgotten to remove. You recorded me? His voice was low, dangerous. That's illegal. You can't record someone without their consent. Pretty sure drugging your wife and stealing her identity is more illegal, Stephanie shot back. Derek's facade cracked, his charming mask replaced by cold calculation. You have no idea what you're getting involved in, he said to Stephanie before turning to me. Amy, be reasonable. Whatever you think you heard, you're misinterpreting it. Am I misinterpreting this too? I held up the bottle of pills from his gym bag. Or these? I gestured to the forged documents spread across his desk. Derek's expression darkened. He lunged for his laptop, clearly intending to delete evidence, but Stephanie was quicker, slamming the lid shut and pulling it away from him. It's too late, I said. We've already backed everything up. Derek's composure completely shattered then. You stupid bitch, he snarled, his handsome face contorted with rage. Do you have any idea how long I've had to pretend to love you? How hard it's been living this fake life, coming home to you every day when I could have been with Karen. His words cut deep despite everything I already knew, but I refused to show it. How much of my money have you already taken? How many of your clients have you stolen from? Enough that you'll never find it, he sneered. And by the time anyone figures it out, I'll be long gone. He lunged forward suddenly, grabbing for my phone on the desk. I reacted instinctively, trying to keep it away from him. In the struggle, he shoved me hard against the wall, knocking the wind out of me. Stephanie shouted and tried to intervene, but Derek pushed her aside roughly, sending her stumbling into the bookshelf. As I gasped for breath, Derek grabbed my phone and began frantically trying to delete files. What he didn't realize was that I'd been recording our entire confrontation. It's already uploaded to the cloud, I managed to say. Everything. The videos, the documents, this conversation. Deleting it from my phone won't help you. Derek stared at me, the full realization of his situation dawning on his face. In that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before in my husband's eyes, pure, unmasked hatred. You've ruined everything, he said, his voice eerily calm now. But they'll never believe you. I've made sure of that. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected financial advisor with a spotless record or his unstable wife who's been acting erratically, possibly abusing prescription medication? They'll believe the evidence, Stephanie said, pulling out her own phone. And they'll believe me, and the lawyer Amy already consulted, and the digital forensic specialist who's already examining copies of everything we found. This last part was a lie, we hadn't had time to consult anyone else yet, but Derek didn't know that. His eyes darted between us, calculating his options. Suddenly, he made a decision. He threw my phone hard against the wall, shattering it, and bolted for the door. "Derek, stop!" I called out, but he was already running down the stairs. We heard the front door slam, followed by the screech of tires as he peeled out of the driveway. Stephanie and I stood in shocked silence for a moment before she turned to me, her expression grim. "Now we call the police," she said. "Right now." This time, I didn't argue. The next few hours passed in a blur. 2 police officers arrived at our house, followed by detectives once the magnitude of Derek's crimes became clear. I gave my statement multiple times, showing them the video evidence, the pills, the forged documents. They photographed everything, bagged the bottle of sleeping pills as evidence, and took Derek's laptop and our desktop computer for forensic analysis. "We'll need to get a sample of your blood tested," one of the detectives, a compassionate woman named Detective Laura Harris, told me. "If he's been drugging you regularly, there should still be traces in your system." By dawn, I was sitting in an emergency room having blood drawn. Stephanie had stayed by my side through everything, holding my hand during the blood test and bringing me coffee as we waited for the preliminary results. "We found benzodiazepines in your system," the doctor confirmed a few hours later. "Specifically, a sleep medication that shouldn't be taken without medical supervision. I'm submitting the official results to the police, but I'd like to keep you for observation for a few hours to make sure there are no adverse effects." That same morning, I contacted a lawyer recommended by Detective Harris, Victoria Mendez, who specialized in financial crimes and identity theft. She arrived at the hospital within hours of my call, a formidable woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense attitude that immediately made me feel safer. "The good news, if we can call it that, is that you discovered this before he could complete the transfers of your inheritance," Victoria explained after reviewing my case. "We've already filed for emergency freezes on all your accounts and submitted requests to the financial institutions to investigate any recent activities or changes." When I was released from the hospital that afternoon, Victoria accompanied Stephanie and me to Montgomery Financial, Derek's firm. The management team was already in crisis mode, Derek hadn't shown up for work, and they had received concerning calls from several clients. The meeting with Derek's boss, Martin Reynolds, was tense but productive. He appeared genuinely shocked by the evidence we presented. "I had concerns about some irregular activities recently," Martin admitted. "But I never imagined Derek was behind it. I thought it was a system error or possibly a junior staff member making mistakes." He confirmed that Karen Reynolds, no relation to him, had also failed to appear for work that morning. The firm immediately granted access to forensic accountants to begin tracing the missing funds and determining the full extent of the embezzlement. "We'll cooperate fully with the investigation," Martin assured us. "Our priority is protecting our clients and making this right." That evening, Detective Harris called with news. Derek and Karen had been arrested at a hotel near O'Hare Airport. They had been preparing to board an international flight using fake passports. "We've recovered several electronic devices and documents from their hotel room," she informed me. "It appears they were planning to flee to Belize, which has limited extradition agreements with the United States." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, police interviews, and devastating discoveries. The forensic accounting revealed that Derek and Karen had embezzled nearly $2.7 million from multiple clients over the past 18 months. They had created elaborate false investment reports while diverting funds to offshore accounts. As Victoria had predicted, they hadn't managed to access my inheritance yet, though not for lack of trying. The documentation we'd found in Derek's office included completed transfer forms with my forged signature, ready to be submitted. Most disturbing was the discovery of a detailed contingency plan on Derek's laptop. If their scheme had been discovered, they had prepared evidence suggesting I was the mastermind. Derek had been systematically using my devices to access the fraudulent accounts, creating a digital trail that would implicate me. He had even drafted emails from my account to Karen discussing the scheme, though thankfully he had never sent them. The investigation also revealed that Derek had been drugging me for nearly 4 months, far longer than I had realized. The bottle in his gym bag contained a prescription sleeping medication that a toxicologist confirmed matched what was found in my bloodstream. The prescription had been filled under a fake name at a pharmacy in a neighboring town. Through it all, I alternated between overwhelming grief for the loss of the life I thought I had and rage at Derek's calculated betrayal. I took medical leave from work, unable to focus on manuscripts when my own life had become a twisted psychological thriller. I moved out of our house temporarily, staying with Stephanie while I looked for a new place. I couldn't bear to sleep in the bedroom I had shared with Derek, where he had watched me night after night, checking if I was unconscious before enacting his plans. 6 weeks after Derek's arrest, the preliminary hearing was held. I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding as Derek and Karen were let in, both wearing prison jumpsuits. Derek's eyes met mine briefly, and I was struck by the complete absence of remorse in his expression. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Beyond what I had discovered, the investigation had uncovered communications dating back nearly 2 years, revealing that their relationship and criminal conspiracy had begun long before I had noticed any changes in our marriage. To my surprise, Derek's boss at Montgomery Financial approached me after the hearing. "I've been wanting to speak with you," Martin said hesitantly. I should have seen the signs. There were irregularities that I dismissed because I trusted Derek implicitly. "We all trusted him," I replied. "That's how con men operate." "The firm would like to make this right," he continued. "We're working to recover the stolen funds, and we want to ensure you're protected from any fallout. Our attorneys will be reaching out to your lawyer to discuss compensation for what you've endured." The news coverage was another ordeal entirely. What Derek had done was sensational enough to attract media attention. Financial advisor drug's wife, embezzles millions, made for compelling headlines. I declined all interview requests, but still found myself the subject of news segments and online discussions. 3 months after their arrest, facing overwhelming evidence, Derek and Karen accepted a plea deal. Derek pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and administering a controlled substance without consent. The plea agreement recommended an 8-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 5 years. Before sentencing, I was given the opportunity to provide a victim impact statement. Standing at the podium, looking directly at the man I had once loved with all my heart, I found strength I didn't know I possessed. "Derek Wilson didn't just steal money," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "He stole my sense of safety, my ability to trust, my belief in my own judgment. He methodically planned to ruin my life while looking me in the eye and telling me he loved me. He violated my body with drugs and my mind with lies. But despite his best efforts, he didn't destroy me. I'm still standing. And long after Derek has been forgotten, I will continue to rebuild my life, stronger, wiser, and free from his manipulation." Derek didn't look up once during my statement. When the judge sentenced him to the full 8 years recommended in the plea agreement, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sense of a chapter closing. As I left the courthouse that day, surrounded by Stephanie, Victoria, and other supporters who had stood by me through this nightmare, I took my first full breath in months. The worst was over. The long process of healing could finally begin. 6 months after Derek's sentencing, I stood in the empty living room of my new condominium, surrounded by moving boxes and the fresh smell of paint. The space was entirely mine. I had chosen every detail, from the pale blue walls to the hardwood floors to the security system with cameras monitoring every entrance. After selling our house, which still felt tainted by Derek's presence despite redecorating attempts, I had purchased this 2-bedroom condo in a secure building closer to downtown Chicago. It was smaller than our suburban home but felt infinitely more like a sanctuary. "This place is perfect for you," Stephanie said as she helped me unpack kitchen boxes. She had been my rock throughout the entire ordeal, from that first midnight call to helping me choose new furniture that held no memories of my previous life. "It feels like a fresh start," I agreed, arranging glasses on open shelving. "Something that's just mine." Returning to work had been another milestone in my recovery. My colleagues at Patterson Publishing had been supportive beyond measure. My boss had extended my leave without question and eased me back with a reduced workload when I was ready to return. Take on only what feels manageable, she had advised. The books will still be here when you're ready for more. Gradually, I had resumed my full responsibilities, finding that losing myself in other people's stories provided a welcome escape from my own. The focused attention required for editing allowed my mind respite from constantly processing Derek's betrayal. What surprised me most during this period was the unexpected support that emerged from unlikely places. Derek's former boss, Martin, had been true to his word about making things right. Montgomery Financial had settled with me privately, compensating me for the trauma I'd experienced and covering my legal expenses. They had also hired new compliance officers and implemented stricter oversight protocols to prevent similar schemes in the future. Several of Derek's former clients reached out to me, sharing their own sense of betrayal and offering solidarity. One couple in their 70s, who had lost a significant portion of their retirement savings to Derek's embezzlement, invited me to dinner and shared stories of how they had rebuilt after previous setbacks in life. "The worst thing you can do is let this define you," Mrs. Rivera told me, her weathered hand covering mine across the table. "You are so much more than what happened to you." Her words became something of a mantra for me in the months that followed. Therapy was another crucial element in my healing journey. Twice-weekly sessions with Dr. Patel helped me process not just the trauma of Derek's betrayal but also the subtle red flags I had ignored and the questions about my own judgment that haunted me. "Being deceived doesn't make you weak or foolish," Dr. Patel reminded me often. "Con artists and manipulators succeed precisely because they're skilled at exploiting trust. Your capacity to trust isn't a flaw, it's a strength, even if it was manipulated in this case." Slowly, I began to believe her. I started keeping a journal, tracking my progress and acknowledging small victories. The first night I slept without nightmares, the first time I accepted a cup of tea from someone without hesitation, the first day I went 24 hours without thinking about Derek. 3 months after moving into my new place, I took another significant step in my healing process. With encouragement from my therapist, I started a support group for victims of intimate partner deception and financial abuse. We met monthly in a community center downtown, sharing stories and resources. "I thought I was the only one who could be fooled so completely," one woman confessed during our second meeting. "Hearing your stories makes me feel less alone, less stupid." "You're not stupid," I told her with conviction born from my own hard-won insights. "You were targeted by someone who deliberately manipulated your capacity for love and trust. That's on them, not you." Running the support group led to an unexpected opportunity. A financial literacy organization invited me to speak at their conference about identifying signs of financial abuse and protecting personal assets. My first presentation was terrifying but ultimately empowering, transforming my painful experience into knowledge that could help others. This advocacy work also connected me with lawmakers pushing for stricter penalties for drugging without consent. I provided testimony to a state legislative committee considering amendments to existing laws. Current statutes don't adequately address non-sexual motivations for drugging someone, I explained to the committee. In my case, my husband drugged me repeatedly not for sexual assault but to commit financial crimes while I was unconscious. The harm is significant regardless of the perpetrator's motivation. As my external world expanded through these new connections and purpose, I also worked on rebuilding my internal landscape. Dr. Patel encouraged me to reconsider what trust could look like after betrayal. "Trust isn't an all-or-nothing proposition," she explained. "Healthy trust is earned incrementally and continuously validated. It includes room for verification without constant suspicion." This concept was revolutionary for me. I had swung from blind trust with Derek to fearing I could never trust anyone again. Finding middle ground became my goal. Cautious openness rather than either extreme. Stephanie was my testing ground for this new approach to trust. I watched her consistent actions, her follow-through on commitments both small and large, her transparency, all validating that trustworthy people do exist. A year after Derek's sentencing, I received an unexpected letter from the district attorney's office. Karen Reynolds was offering additional information about other potential financial crimes in exchange for consideration during her parole hearings. The DA wanted to know if I had objections. I sat with the letter for days, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted Karen to serve every minute of her sentence, another part recognized that her information might help other victims recover stolen funds. "What would bring you the most peace?" Dr. Patel asked when I brought the letter to our session. After much reflection, I wrote to the DA supporting the exchange of information for consideration. Not out of forgiveness, but from a place of wanting to limit harm to others. It was a small step toward reclaiming my agency in a story where I had been cast as a victim. Around this time, I also began tentative steps toward dating again. My first coffee date was with a history professor Stephanie had introduced me to, a kind man who knew the broad outlines of my story. I was so nervous I nearly canceled 3 times, I admitted to him over lattes. "I'm honored you didn't," he replied with a gentle smile that asked for nothing. Though that particular connection didn't develop romantically, it showed me that I could sit across from someone new without constant fear. Each subsequent date became slightly easier, though I maintained careful boundaries and moved at a deliberately slow pace. "There's no timeline for this," Dr. Patel assured me when I expressed frustration at my lingering hesitation. "Healing isn't linear." The most unexpected part of my recovery was discovering new aspects of myself that had been dormant during my marriage. I joined a weekend hiking group, something Derek would have dismissed as a waste of time. I took a creative writing class, finding that I had stories of my own to tell beyond editing others' words. I volunteered at a literacy program teaching adults to read, finding profound satisfaction in witnessing their progress. 18 months after that night when I first noticed the bitter taste in my tea, I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, truly seeing myself. The woman looking back at me was both familiar and new. There were fine lines around my eyes that hadn't been there before, a gravitas in my expression that spoke of hard-won wisdom. I wasn't the same person who had trusted so easily, who had built her life around a marriage that turned out to be a lie. But I wasn't defined solely by that betrayal either. I was Amy Wilson, survivor and rebuilder, editor and advocate, friend and daughter, hiker and volunteer. I was multifaceted in ways I hadn't recognized before crisis stripped away everything I thought defined me. The path forward wasn't completely clear, perhaps it never would be again. I had learned that certainty was an illusion anyway. But I had built a new foundation based on my own values and choices rather than someone else's deception. And that foundation, though tested by the harshest circumstances, had proven stronger than I ever imagined I could be. As I prepare to share my story with you today, I want to leave you with this thought: sometimes losing what we believed was essential to our happiness creates space for discovering what truly matters. The betrayal that I thought would destroy me instead revealed my capacity for resilience. Trust broken can be a pathway to wisdom. And a life rebuilt consciously, deliberately, can be more authentic than one that was never challenged at all. Have you ever experienced betrayal that ultimately led to unexpected growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to join our community of survivors and rebuilders. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that there is life, rich, meaningful life, after devastating betrayal. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and remember, our worst chapters don't have to be our defining ones.